You know, you've probably been told your whole life that if you feel burnt out, you just need a break.
Right, just take a breather.
Exactly. Like you just need a vacation or a long bubble bath, maybe a mental health day, or just a really good night out with your
The
friends.
standard self-care playbook.
Right. But what if everything you're doing to, fix your exhaustion is actually the exact thing that's tearing you apart?
Oh, wow. That is a heavy thought.
It really is. But think about it. What if the frantic pursuit of self-care and even human connection is precisely what's deepening this void inside you?
I mean, it's a terrifying premise, isn't it? But honestly, if you look at the landscape of modern burnout right now, the standard remedies are, well, they're clearly failing.
Yeah, it could be.
People are resting more, they're analyzing themselves more, practicing more self-love than, like, any generation before them. And yet, the collective fatigue is only getting heavier.
It's like we're just spinning our wheels.
Exactly. Because the exhaustion we're talking about today, it isn't something a weekend getaway can cure. It is a profound, almost paralyzing state of being stuck.
Right.
You started a project, you abandon it.
Hmm.
You pick up a habit, you drop it. And then you are just left sitting in the rubble of all these unfinished fragments.
Oh, I know that feeling so well.
Yeah, it leaves you with this deep, unshakable impatience and a really harsh sense of self-denial.
It feels like you're furious with yourself. Your wheels are spinning so fast, but you are only sinking deeper into the mud.
Right.
And society's answer is always, oh, you just need better time management, or, you need to wake up at 5 a.m. and hustle harder.
The hustle culture trap.
Exactly. But today, we are throwing that entire framework completely out the window.
I love it. Let's do it.
We are doing a deep dive into a really radical countercultural philosophy. It's drawn from this profoundly striking Japanese essay.
But the title of which translates roughly to Everything is Incomplete and Painful.
Everything is incomplete and painful. I mean, what a title. And we aren't just summarizing it today for you. We're using it as a lens to dissect the actual root of our suffering.
Because the core idea here, the real mission of this deep dive, is a total paradigm shift.
Yeah, tell them what the shift is.
The idea is that suffering actually comes from our desperate attempts to erase the suffering.
Wait, trying to erase it causes it.
That is the crux of it, yeah.
Yeah.
The idea that only when you surrender to the flow of the pain, when you stop fighting it, stop trying to, medicate it with pleasure and stop trying to outrun it,
Right.
only then does a true, unshakable silence emerge.
That is wild.
It is. And to get there, we really have to fundamentally dismantle how we view our own lethargy.
Oh, we definitely do. Because when you see someone who, say, can't get off the couch,
Over.
or when you stare at an email for 3 hours and physically cannot bring yourself to reply.
The worst feeling.
It is. But the immediate societal instinct there is a moral judgment. We label it laziness.
Or a lack of willpower.
Oh, absolutely. The guilt trip we put ourselves on is just vicious. I'm just weak or I'm slacking.
Right.
But this philosophy completely redefines that lethargy. It explicitly states that a lack of motivation is not a moral failing. It's not mental weakness.
Not at all.
Instead, it is the result of the inner self being ground down over a very, very long period of time.
I like to think of it like a natural spring, right?
Yeah.
Where the water is supposed to flow out freely.
Okay, a spring.
Yeah. But if years of storms kick up dirt, eventually that exit point gets blocked by all of the accumulated debris.
Oh, I see.
The water is still there, the pressure is still there, but nothing can get out.
And if we trace the origin of that debris, I mean, where is all that dirt coming from?
Well, it almost always leads back to childhood.
Of course.
Right. We are talking about the accumulation of bitter experiences or profoundly unreasonable situations.
Things that just weren't fair.
Exactly. Or even just emotional needs that simply went unmet when you were young and you didn't have the tools to process them.
Give me an example of that.
Sure. Let's say you were a child who only received affection when you achieved something, like getting a perfect grade or winning a game.
Okay.
The unmet need there is unconditional love. And over time, that doesn't just fade away into the background. It calcifies.
Wow, it hardens.
Yeah. It creates what the author calls a hollow core.
The hollow core. That phrase really hits hard.
It does.
Because as adults, that void, it doesn't just sit there quietly inside us, does it?
Oh, definitely not. It manifests as this terrifying impulse.
Right. It's that feeling that if I am not doing something right now, my very existence might just evaporate.
Exactly. It's the panic of stillness.
The panic of stillness. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, because the core issue isn't that you have, too many emails to answer or too many hobbies to juggle.
Yeah.
It's that you are absolutely terrified of what happens if you stop moving.
Because if you stop moving, you feel the hollow core.
Right. The void left by those childhood experiences, it acts like a vacuum. And as an adult, you try to plug that vacuum with constant motion,
With work, with scrolling on your phone, with socializing.
starting new projects. Exactly. The panic you feel when you are sitting quietly in an empty room, that is the panic of coming face to face with that hollow core.
So our compulsion to constantly produce is actually just a defense mechanism.
An elaborate defense mechanism against existential dread, yes.
Trying to picture how this actually feels inside the body, I keep coming back to this analogy of an exhausted shark.
Oh, I like this. A
Yeah.
shark.
Yeah. We all know that trivia, right? That some sharks have to keep swimming constantly just to push water over their gills so they can breathe.
Right, if they stop, they suffocate.
Exactly. Now imagine a shark that is fundamentally, physically, and mentally depleted. Every single muscle fiber in its body is screaming for rest. It desperately wants to just sink to the sandy bottom of the ocean and sleep for a month, but its biology says, if you stop, you die.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. It really captures the desperation.
Because that's what modern burnout actually is. It isn't just being tired. It's a brutal internal war. The absolute compulsion to keep moving is at war with the absolute inability to do so.
You are damned if you do and damned if you don't.
Yes. And that damned if you do, damned if you don't trap. That is precisely why quitting an action is so incredibly painful.
Right. If you quit the job or end the relationship or drop that exhausting hobby, you suffocate like the shark. You have to face the void.
But continuing the action is equally painful because you are running on empty.
Exactly. And what is so crucial to understand here is that the action itself isn't the villain.
Wait, it isn't.
No. The job might be totally fine. The hobby might be interesting. The problem is the utility you are forcing onto that action.
Oh, I see.
You're using it as a tool to fill a void it was never, ever designed to fill.
It's like trying to patch a pothole with tissue paper.
Perfect analogy. Yeah.
And this concept in the essay uses some really stark, grounded examples to illustrate how we try to fill that hole.
Like substance use, right?
Yeah, exactly. Take substance use. We all know drinking to excess makes the next day a living hell.
Of course.
And with smoking, the cigarette count just keeps creeping up and you can literally feel it harming your lungs. But the fascinating point the text makes here
Yeah.
is that people don't fail to quit these habits because they lack some magical reserve of willpower.
Right. It's not a willpower issue at all.
No, they fail to quit because they do not know how to face the massive, empty, echoing silence that drops like an anvil the second that temporary distraction is gone.
That is so true. And let's expand that, right? Beyond just chemical substances. Think about behavioral addictions,
Like what?
like mindlessly scrolling through social media for 3 hours.
Oh, guilty.
Right. Or compulsive online shopping. Or even like hyperfixating on organizing your apartment.
Okay, wow. Even organizing.
Yeah. The mechanism is identical to the nicotine rush.
Yeah.
You are applying a temporary stimulus to a permanent void.
Just slapping a Band-Aid on it.
Yeah, exactly. And here is where the real tragedy lies. Trying to fill the void with temporary stimuli doesn't slowly shrink the hole.
Wait, it doesn't?
No, it actually gives the void a sharper outline.
Oh, wow. Okay, wait, explain that. How does distracting yourself make the hole sharper?
Well, think of it like painting over dethrust on a car, but with like cheap glossy paint.
Okay.
For a few days, it looks shiny and new, but when that paint inevitably flakes off, the rest looks even worse by contrast.
Because you remember how shiny it just was.
Exactly. When you use a temporary distraction, you experience a brief moment of relief. But when the stimulus wears off, when the phone battery dies or the package arrives and the thrill is gone,
Right.
the profound emptiness that follows is thrown into sharp relief. You contrast the temporary high with your baseline reality, and suddenly you realize starkly just how massive the crater inside you actually is.
It's literally tracing the edge of the crater with a neon highlighter.
A neon highlighter, yes.
You aren't filling it at all. You are just making it completely impossible to ignore.
Precisely.
So if tracing the crater with a highlighter just makes the void more obvious, then all those bubble baths, the treat-yourself shopping sprees, the weekend getaways society tells us to take,
Right.
they aren't just useless. They might actually be harmful.
They are. And the philosophy we are exploring today takes a highly controversial, but I think deeply necessary stance here.
And what is that stance?
The assertion is that standard self-love actions often completely fail the individual. because they are, in fact, just forms of pleasure consumption.
Okay, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Just on behalf of anyone listening who is thinking, hold on a minute, I can totally understand how eating a pint of ice cream or buying expensive shoes is superficial pleasure consumption.
Right, that's easy to see.
But this philosophy claims that even seeking human connection can increase suffering.
It does.
Isn't human connection supposed to be the ultimate cure for the human condition? Like, how on earth can connecting with people be categorized alongside buying cheap shoes?
It is a really bitter pill to swallow.
I know.
But if you look at the actual mechanics of how we interact when we are severely burnt out, the reasoning is incredibly tight.
Okay, walk me through it.
There is a vast difference between mutual, stable companionship and what happens when a hollow core is driving your interactions.
Ah, I see.
When you're deeply empty, socializing often becomes another form of consumption.
Because you're trying to fill the void.
Exactly. You are consuming someone else's attention, their empathy, or their reactions to numb your own pain. Because that connection doesn't actually heal the root wound, it acts as a temporary superficial bandage.
So you slap the bandage on, you go to the dinner party, you vent to a friend, you laugh, and for 2 hours you feel like a normal, functioning human being.
Precisely. But what happens when the dinner party ends?
You get back to your car.
You shut the car door, and the silence is deafening. The pleasure wears off, the bandage is ripped away, and the underlying suffering feels exponentially sharper.
The neon highlighter again.
Yes. But the problem with human connection goes even deeper than just the contrast of being alone again. It introduces this immense burden of seeking.
The burden of expectation. This is where things get really messy, right?
Oh, absolutely. The root of so much interpersonal suffering lies in the desperate desire to be understood.
We all want that.
We do.
Yeah.
But when we seek human connection from a place of deep emptiness, we aren't just looking for company. We're looking for salvation.
Wow.
We want someone to look at us, comprehend our exact, specific pain, and validate it.
Right, we want them to fix it.
But think about the cognitive load of that. You are creating a vicious, exhausting cycle. You expect to be understood, you open up, and inevitably, because other people are flawed, distracted, and carrying their own hollow cores.
They drop the ball.
You were disappointed, they say the wrong thing, they offer toxic positivity, or they just don't care as much as you need them to.
So you basically hand them the remote control to your emotional state, and they immediately press the wrong button.
Exactly. You tie your entire well-being to the completely unpredictable, highly volatile reactions of flawed humans.
Which is a terrible bet to make.
It really is. So you withdraw, you hurt, and then, because the void is still screaming, you try again with someone else. And this cycle leads to profound, bone-deep exhaustion.
It sounds exhausting just talking about it.
And this is where the philosophy praises a realization that modern psychology usually flags as a huge warning sign.
Wait, really? What realization?
The realization that enjoyment isn't worth the cost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The idea that the temporary high of being understood isn't worth the inevitable, crushing crash of being misunderstood.
And the essay frames that as a good thing.
Yes, it's framed here as a very honest, very deep recognition of reality. You aren't depressed. You are finally seeing the mechanics of your own suffering.
That is wild. It's completely counterintuitive.
It is, isn't it?
Because we usually think of the phrase, it's just not worth the effort, as the ultimate red flag for depression, like giving up.
Yeah.
But framing it as an awakening, you are waking up to the fact that you've been playing a rigged game at a casino.
That's exactly it.
The house always wins, so refusing to play is actually the smartest move you can make.
Precisely. You're just walking away from the table.
But wait, if I realize the game is rigged and I stop expecting my friends or my partner to fill my void, isn't there a huge danger of just becoming incredibly bitter?
How do you mean?
Like, fine, people are disappointing, everyone is selfish, I hate everyone. Doesn't that just make you a miserable misanthrope?
It's a critical question. And there is a vital psychological distinction to be made here between letting go and hating.
Okay, what's the difference?
Letting go of expectations is not the same as hating someone. Let's look at the mechanics of hate.
Sure.
When you hate someone, or when you are deeply bitter towards society, you are still highly engaged.
Oh, right.
Hate is a form of deep, burning interest. It requires a massive amount of energy.
Right. If I'm furious at a friend for not validating my feelings, I'm still completely attached to them.
You're still hooked.
I'm holding on to a burning coal, waiting to throw it at them, but it's burning my ham in the meantime. I still have the expectation, it's just inverted into anger.
Exactly. You are actively directing your limited emotional resources toward the object of your resentment. Hate drains you just as rapidly as desperate seeking love does.
So what is the alternative?
True release is the complete neutralization of that dynamic.
Hmm.
It is the quiet, peaceful withdrawal of interest.
Withdrawal of interest?
Yes, you accept that others cannot fill your void, and therefore you no longer require them to try. You aren't mad at them for failing to do the impossible. You simply drop the burning coal. You take your energy back.
Ooh, wow. Okay, so if we drop the coal, if we stop seeking validation from others, and we realize that our society's version of self-care is just tracing our trauma with a highlighter, where do we actually go?
Right, what's the next step?
Because if modern psychology and the self-help aisle at the bookstore aren't giving us the tools, what frameworks do actually help us process this pain?
And this is where we dive into a really fascinating pivot in the text.
Yeah, the text points to two surprising places: religion and the dismantling of our own identities.
Yes, so there is a recognized phenomenon where people experiencing intractable, deep-seated suffering suddenly find themselves resonating with ancient religious concepts,
Even if they aren't religious.
even if they have been atheists their whole lives.
That's fascinating.
They start connecting with things like Buddhism's truth of suffering, which is the idea that life by its very nature is characterized by dissatisfaction,
Right.
or Christianity's concept of original sin, the idea that we are born into a state of inherent brokenness.
But let's clarify this immediately, because I really don't want anyone tuning out thinking this is suddenly a sermon.
No, definitely not.
We are not talking about religious conversion. Nobody is saying, you are burnt out, therefore you need to find God and join a monastery.
No, not at all. It is about mapping, not converting.
Mapping, I like that.
Religion resonates with the deeply suffering person, not because it provides a magical cure, but because over thousands of years, these traditions have perfectly, ruthlessly verbalized the exact contours of human pain.
It gives it a shape.
Exactly. Because think about modern self-help. It's usually about optimization. It tells you, here are 3 life hacks to be happy.
Which only makes you feel more broken and isolated when the hacks inevitably fail.
Right. It gaslights you into thinking you're the problem because you couldn't, meditate your way out of clinical burnout.
But an ancient text says, existence is inherently painful, the world is broken, and suffering is the baseline.
Yes.
When you are sitting on your kitchen floor at 2 a.m., staring at the wall, completely overwhelmed by your hollow core, the self-help book feels like a lie.
Completely.
The ancient text is the only thing that actually matches your reality. It provides a vocabulary.
Yeah.
You don't need to join the religion to borrow the dictionary.
Exactly. It provides an architecture for the suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have a vocabulary for it, it no longer feels like an amorphous, suffocating monster in the dark. You can define its edges.
And speaking of defining things, this perfectly transitions into why we are so exhausted by the labels we place on ourselves.
Oh, the labels, yes.
The vocabulary of society is actually destroying us.
It really is.
The labels. This was honestly the most intellectually intense part of this entire philosophy for me.
It's incredibly deep.
The deep, almost desperate craving to be liberated from all proper nouns. Your name, your gender, your job title, your race, your nationality.
Stripping it all away.
The desire to just shed it. It even touches on this esoteric desire to erase the distinction between organic and inorganic beings.
Right.
When I first read that, my brain broke a little bit to want to shed the distinction of even being biological. What does that even mean in practical terms?
I know, it sounds abstract.
Yeah.
But let's break down the mechanics of a label, and it makes perfect sense.
Okay, let's do it.
Humans use labels to categorize and process the world efficiently. But while a label clarifies, it simultaneously fragments.
It chops things up.
It chops the continuous unified reality of the world into tiny, isolated, rigid boxes. And when we apply those labels to ourselves, like, I'm a manager, I'm a mother, I'm a high achiever, I'm a good citizen.
We lock ourselves into those boxes.
We do.
And every single box comes with a heavy, exhausting instruction manual.
Yes. Think about the cognitive load of code switching. When you wake up, you perform the label of partner.
Right.
Then you commute and put on the label of employee or boss,
Yeah.
which dictates how you speak, what you wear, what emotions you're allowed to show.
And then you come home and perform the label of parent.
Exactly. Maintaining the borders of these identities takes an immense amount of psychological energy. You are constantly on guard, defending your labels against the chaotic reality of the world.
So when the philosophy talks about wanting to erase the boundary between organic and inorganic, wanting to be the same as a rock, it's not a literal wish for death. It's the ultimate fantasy of logging off.
Logging off. I love that.
Because if I am a rock, I don't have to perform. A rock doesn't have a quota to meet. A rock doesn't have to smile at its boss or pretend it isn't tired.
It just exists.
It is just the pure exhaustion of existing biologically in a society that demands constant performance.
It is the fatigue of maintaining your borders.
Right.
The craving for a state where all is one and one is all isn't lofty ivory tower philosophy. It is a primal sigh of relief.
Because if all boundaries dissolve,
You finally get to put down the heavy armor of your identity.
there is a beautiful, piercing paradox in this, though.
What's that?
Wanting to be a rock, wanting to know what exists beyond all thoughts, beyond emotions, beyond the physical senses, on the surface, it sounds like complete surrender.
It does.
But the reality is the exact opposite. The very desire to know what exists in that absolute label-free silence is undeniable proof that a person still possesses the energy to live. The search for absolute silence is a desperate, profound cry for a more authentic kind of life.
It is the mind's ultimate survival instinct. Your psyche is essentially saying, the current operating system, the one built on societal labels, performance, and constant motion, is critically failing.
We need to reboot.
We need to strip the system down to the bare metal to survive. It is a radical act of self-preservation, wearing the mask of surrender.
Okay, so let's get incredibly practical here. Let's say we do this. We strip the system down.
Right.
We drop the burning coal of expectation. We shed the heavy armor of our labels. How do we actually move through a Tuesday?
A Tuesday, right.
We still have to pay rent. We have to go to the grocery store. We have to navigate traffic. If we aren't performing our labels and we aren't fighting the void with constant action, what does our behavior actually look like?
That is the big question.
And this is where we have to understand the razor-sharp distinction between giving up entirely and truly letting go. It's all about how we interact with the flow of life.
Right. When you are in this depleted bare metal state, you have to navigate the currents of reality differently. There's a massive mechanical difference between two concepts that sound similar: being swept away versus riding the flow.
I instantly map this to being caught in a riptide in the ocean. It is the perfect physical analogy for mental fatigue.
Let's hear it.
If you are swimming in the ocean and you get caught in a riptide, the current pulls you out to sea.
Right.
If you panic, if you fight your reality and try to swim directly against the current back to the shore, you are going to exhaust your muscles in 5 minutes and you will drown.
You literally can't beat it.
Right. And that is what happens when we fight our burnout by trying to force ourselves to be productive.
You are fighting a force of nature that is infinitely stronger than you.
Exactly. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, if you just go completely limp, close your eyes and surrender your body entirely to the ocean that is being swept away,
You become debris.
your will is erased, you are just debris. And in that scenario, you also drown.
Because passive victimhood is just as destructive as frantic resistance. Both lead to drowning.
But if you keep your wits about you, if you stay afloat, acknowledge the power of the current. Let it take you outward for a moment while you calmly, deliberately swim parallel to the shore until you are out of the pull.
That is riding the flow.
You survive. You didn't fight the ocean, but you didn't surrender your existence to it either.
Riding the flow is a highly active state of non-resistance. You accept the reality of your suffering, but you firmly maintain your agency within it.
Firmly maintain your agency.
Yes. The philosophy describes this ideal state as returning to the most basic, fundamental rhythm of existence. Move, stop, move, stop.
Move, stop. It's so jarringly simple compared to, the 50-step morning routines we see online.
It is the complete dismantling of the convoluted structures we build around living. We are taught that life must be this grand, continuous, strategic upward trajectory.
Always grinding.
But when you are healing the hollow core, existence becomes binary. You exert energy, and then you cease. You act, and then you rest.
Move, stop.
And crucially, you remove all moral judgment from both phases. Stopping isn't laziness. It is just the necessary exhale to the inhale of moving.
And there is a really vital nuance to how we navigate this move-stop rhythm. When we talk about riding the flow, it sounds a bit like saying, Jesus take the wheel or trusting yourself to fate.
Right.
But handing over your agency is actually dangerous, isn't it?
It is entirely counterproductive.
Yeah.
The concept of entrusting, whether to fate, to God, to a partner, or to a corporation, implies dependency.
Which goes back to seeking.
Exactly. It means you are abdicating responsibility for your own life.
Mm-hmm.
It is handing your remote control over again. Instead of entrusting, we need to employ the concept of tightening.
Tightening. I love the physicality of that word. It
Yeah,
feels deliberate.
It is the physical act of intentionally closing things out with your own hands.
So let's give a real-world example of tightening, because I think this is so important.
Sure.
It's the difference between ghosting someone because you are overwhelmed, which is being swept away, and sending a polite but firm text saying, I don't have the capacity to continue this commitment right now. You aren't leaving the thread loose. You are tying it off.
That's a great example.
You are closing the browser tab in your brain rather than letting it run in the background, draining your battery.
Exactly. It is a quiet, powerful assertion of your own will. You aren't trying to conquer the world. You are simply defining your own boundaries within it.
Just managing your own space.
You bring things to completion, even if that completion is just walking away. And this concept of tightening, of closing things out, it extends to the most toxic force in modern life. The metrics we use to measure ourselves.
The tyranny of the timeline.
Yes.
Age, income, the number of goals achieved, your weight, your credit score, how many followers you have. We are completely obsessed with the data points of our lives.
Because numbers offer a highly seductive, false sense of security. They give us the illusion of control and progress.
But they are just labels, aren't they?
They are. Numbers are just the ultimate, most rigid form of labels. They slice the fluid, continuous experience of living into sterile data points.
Right.
The philosophy notes that true reality only becomes visible when we finally let go of these numerical measurements.
Because if you stop measuring your life against an arbitrary stopwatch, like I should be married by 30, I should own a house by 35, I should be fully healed from my trauma in 6 months.
It's also arbitrary.
It is. And if you let that go, you instantly neutralize an enormous source of the impatience and self-denial that fuels the hollow core in the first place. You stop judging the move, stop rhythm.
You just let it be.
So let's look at the horizon line here. If we actually commit to this path,
Okay.
if we drop the labels, abandon the metrics, tighten our boundaries, and just ride the flow, what kind of life does this actually create?
That's the destination, right?
Exactly. The final section of the text paints a picture of a radical, highly solitary, but surprisingly compassionate existence. Let's talk about choosing solitude and what is referred to as the map of suffering.
The ultimate lifestyle envisioned here might sound quite extreme at first glance.
It really does.
It involves throwing away the superfluous, eliminating unnecessary conveniences, stepping off the capitalist treadmill, seeking a degree of self-sufficiency, and deliberately distancing oneself from endless desires.
Now, if someone is listening to this while stuck in gridlock traffic on their way to a corporate job, telling them to step off the capitalist treadmill and eliminate convenience sounds like a fairy tale.
It sounds impossible.
We can't all just sell our possessions and move to a cabin in the woods. But there is a very practical, actionable takeaway here. It isn't an all-or-nothing demand.
No, not at all. The key insight is that the direction you are facing is far more important than the speed at which you are traveling.
I love that. Direction over speed.
You don't have to achieve monk-like detachment by Friday. The process is about shifting your center of gravity.
It's a compass heading.
Exactly. You change your trajectory by letting go of one small thing at a time. Today, maybe tightening means you decline one social obligation that you only ever attend out of guilt.
Right. Just one thing.
Tomorrow, maybe it means you choose not to measure your worth by how many tasks you crossed off your to-do list. You slowly adjust the compass.
And as you walk in that direction, a massive fundamental shift occurs in how you experience being alone.
This is huge because we talked earlier about the agony of loneliness when the hollow core is exposed. The silence is deafening.
Right, the panic of stillness.
But when you shift your center of gravity, solitude gets entirely reframed. As long as you view loneliness as a deficiency, as a lack of companionship, as proof that you are unloved, or as a failure to connect, it is pure, unadulterated agony.
The void just screams.
But the moment you reframe solitude not as an exile, but as a deliberate choice,
Right.
a space you have intentionally cleared for yourself to simply ride the flow without interference, the entire texture of it changes.
It's the difference between being isolated and being insulated. Oh, that's a brilliant distinction.
Isolation happens to you. Insulation is something you build to protect yourself from the cold. Solitude becomes a fortress.
A fortress, exactly.
But this brings us to the ultimate million-dollar "so what?" question.
Lay it on me.
If we do all this brutal internal work If we face the void, if we endure the pain of shedding our identities, if we stop running, what is the point?
Right. To what end?
Is the goal just to suffer slightly less while sitting alone in a well-insulated room? Because that sounds a bit bleak. But there is a profoundly uplifting utility to all of this, isn't there?
There is immense utility. By navigating this intense internal abyss, you actually move ahead.
Move ahead of what?
You advance past those who are still trapped in the superficial, frantic sufferings of money, status, and the desperate seeking of validation.
Because you've already been to the bottom.
You have gone to the absolute bottom of the ocean of the human psyche, and you have come back up. And because of that, your suffering transforms into a map.
The cartography of the dark night of the soul. Exactly. You possess a map that cannot be bought, only earned through endurance. And because you have that map, you have the unique ability to reach a hand back to others who are currently lost in the dark.
Wow.
It proves that the suffering was not entirely useless or random. It was the forge that created a tool only you could possess.
I want to make sure we really ground how we use that map, though, because the philosophy introduces a phrase for how we interact with others that initially sounds terrible.
Oh, I know what you mean.
It calls it mechanically correct love. When I hear mechanically correct, I think of a robot. It sounds cold and heartless.
It does sound sterile, but when you unpack the mechanics of it, it is actually the most generous form of human interaction possible.
Really? How so?
Mechanically correct love is the antidote to the messy transactional seeking we discussed earlier. It represents a deep craving for a stable, unwavering connection that isn't tossed around by volatile human emotions.
Give me a scenario. What does mechanically correct love look like in action?
Okay, imagine you have a coworker who is deeply struggling, lashing out, and clearly lost in their own hollow core.
Okay, we've all been there.
If you operate from a place of seeking, you might help them because you want them to praise you or because you want to feel like a savior.
Right.
And when they lash out at you, instead of saying thank you, you get angry and withdraw. That is transactional.
So what's the mechanical approach?
Mechanically correct love means you look at your map. The map says this person is drowning. The correct action is to throw them a life preserver.
Okay.
So you execute care. You do what you believe is right for them without the fear that they might dislike you, and crucially, without the ulterior motive of trying to make them like you.
You do it just because the map says it's the right way out of the dark.
Exactly.
You don't need the ego boost of their gratitude. It is pure, untainted action. It is a lonely path because you aren't getting that hit of dopamine from their validation, but it requires immense quiet strength.
And that leads to the ultimate ideal state of being described in this philosophy. The goal is to become someone who is hard to approach, yet necessary to speak to.
Hard to approach, yet necessary to speak to. I think we all know someone who fits that description, or we've encountered them briefly.
Right.
They aren't the life of the party. They aren't the people pleasers. They don't engage in small talk, and they refuse to validate your comfortable illusions, which makes them intimidating.
Very intimidating.
But when your life completely falls apart, when your hollow core cracks open, they are the exact and only person you want to talk to, because they know the way through the void.
They're the keepers of the map. They have achieved that unshakable state of quiet strength because they have completely abandoned the need to be liked, they have dropped the heavy labels of society, and they have accepted the simple, unapologetic rhythm of moving and stopping.
This has been an incredibly dense, paradigm-shifting journey today. Let's synthesize what we've uncovered.
Good idea.
We started by dismantling the idea of laziness, recognizing that our deep lethargy is often a blocked exit point, a hollow core stemming from childhood that we frantically try to fill with exhausting, constant motion.
We saw how our attempts to heal, whether through superficial pleasure consumption or the desperate transactional seeking of human validation, only act as a highlighter, sharpening the agonizing outline of our own void.
We explored the exhausting cognitive load of performing our societal labels and the primal fantasy of just logging off to find absolute silence.
And we learned that surviving the riptide of burnout doesn't mean fighting it or surrendering to it, but actively riding the flow.
Right, tightening our boundaries, dropping the timeline metrics, and accepting the rhythm of move, stop.
And finally, we saw how embracing deliberate solitude allows us to transform our darkest, most painful experiences into a vital map, enabling us to offer mechanically correct, untainted care to others who are lost.
So beautifully put.
I want to offer one final thought from the underlying philosophy that I think beautifully reframes the whole journey.
Please do.
Even if the total amount of suffering in your life never diminishes,
Altering your distance from it changes the entire landscape.
Altering your distance.
You don't have to eradicate the pain to find peace. You simply learn to accept the buildup of your struggles, not as a series of moral failures, but merely as your personal history. You realize that some days just moving and stopping is entirely enough.
New personal history. It completely removes the judgment. It is just the terrain you have walked.
Exactly.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over as you step back into the noise of your day.
Yeah.
Think back to that exhausting cycle of unfinished projects and frantic motion we started with. If you were to stop using your daily actions, your relentless work, your endless hobbies, your frantic socializing, as a shield to distract yourself from the empty spaces in your life, what would you actually hear in that silence? What if the emptiness you've spent your entire life running away from is the exact place where your true, unshakable strength is waiting to be found?